And we are back with another episode of From the Rafters. Sam and I are here recording on Thursday, September 15th, after a brief 1 week hiatus. We got busy. It's the offseason. Who can blame us, I guess, says the person who skipped the week. Anyways, we are back and we thought we'd do a little season preview, player preview today, go through everybody on the Celtics roster heading into next year. But first, some news coming out of the Celtics universe. Actually, Bobby Manning, friend of the podcast, of CLNS Media and Celtics blog, reporting first that the Celtics are signing local kid Jake Layman to a training camp deal. I went to school in Rentham. I actually played baseball at the school he went to, where he played basketball, which is pretty cool. He joins Justin Jackson and Denzel Valentine in the latest batch of Celtics signees on training camp deals, and they also join Noah Vonleh and Bruno Caboclo, with Broderick Thomas expected to follow on a training camp deal, but we're yet to see about that. So let's start there. We're going to go through, obviously, the two-way guys and the rest of the rosters all the way up to Jayson Tatum. But which of those players do you, Sam, expect to make the roster, and why? And what do you expect from them this season? Obviously, probably not much because they're training camp guys for a reason, but just what are you looking at for those guys?
I think we've kind of gone through all of them at different times, and I think the best fit is Vonleh because of the lack of depth they have in terms of big guys. They've got Rob Williams, Al Horford, Kabengele, and of course, that's it. I mean, if you want to count Grant and Cornette, I'm sorry. Ooh,
you say Hauser?
No. I said Kabengele, and I forgot Cornette. Completely forgot him.
Respect on his name.
they really could use some reinforcement there. You know, Vonleh's been a guy in the league. He's local, which, again, soft spot from Sam for the local guys. But he's an effective rebounder. The Celtics shot themselves in the foot many times last season, whether it was before they got good or after, because they couldn't secure rebounds in important points of the game, right? It doesn't mean Noah Vonleh is going to be running around in the fourth quarter in a close game grabbing boards, but it does mean there are important situations throughout a game where you may have a bench guy in there and they make the difference. You never know. There are times in the playoffs last year the Celtics lost games in the second quarter because they just didn't execute properly. They didn't put the game to bed when they had the chance. I mean, if you want like the most recent example, look at Game 6. They came out and ran the doors off the Warriors, and then they gave up a 21-0 run because of poor defense, poor rebounding, and they couldn't get out of their own way. They literally didn't win a championship last year because they were in their own way. So one of the first steps they can take to fixing that was bringing in Brogdon, right, to boost the bench because they didn't get much out of those guys in the finals. But you're also going to need somebody to help out on the glass because you lost a few games throughout that whole run because of rebounding. So long-winded answer, Vonleh, that's because, you know, he's kind of more of a need than the rest of them.
I agree. I'd say my first vote would be for Vonleh out of those guys because you don't really have a backup center. Obviously, Kabengele on the end of the bench, but he's on a two-way contract, so you want some more, definite, a more definite answer, I should say, on the 15-man roster. So I go for Vonleh because he's always been a solid defender, and like you said, the rebounding would help as well. And he's probably more apt to play the 5 than anybody else they're bringing in for training camp. But they only have 12 out of 15 players on the roster right now. So they have to sign at least 2 of these guys, or they have to bring on at least 2 more players. They could bring on 3, or they could also just choose to leave one spot open at the end of the bench, which is what I assume they will do, bring in some 10 days, but they do need to fill those spots before the season starts. So I agree with you that Vonleh should be one. As far as the other guy, I was a big Matt Ryan supporter, but he has moved on. He's looking for other opportunities around the league. So it seems like that, chance has passed. I'd probably look to one of the wings because the Celtics don't really have any wing depth, right? It's kind of Jayson Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and then you're depending on a guard to step up and play the wing. You're depending on Grant Williams to step down from the forward center position and play the wing. So if I'm the Celtics, I'd bring in one of Justin Jackson, Jake Layman, Denzel Valentine. Bruno Caboclo is cool. Broderick Thomas is cool, but Thomas is more of a guard, and you already have so many guards on the roster anyways. And Caboclo just has kind of never fit in the NBA. He's an okay defender from what I remember, but he's just kind of like, he never really panned out. So I'm bringing Justin Jackson, Jake Layman, Denzel Valentine. Out of those guys, I'd probably lean Justin Jackson. He's a bigger guy. He's shown that he can be a shooter. He shot very well in the G League last season, and he has some familiarity with the Celtics system already. He's been on the team for longer. Jake Layman's fine. He hasn't really panned out in the NBA. Obviously, I know you love the local kid angle, but he hasn't shown the ability to be a consistent shooter. He hasn't shown the tools defensively. Denzel Valentine's he's okay as well. He's an okay shooter. He's an okay defender, if I even want to give him that. But out of the guys, I'm taking the surefire shooting of Justin Jackson over the potential skill sets of the other guys. So if I had to vote on the training camp group that they've put forth, I'd go Noah Vonleh, Justin Jackson as the two guys. But I mean, I could be swayed for a Jake Layman just because of the local kid angle, but I'd probably lean towards the other two.
Well, also to piggyback on the Justin Jackson take is Celtics are looking for a little bit of shooting off the bench now that Gallinari's down, right? We've been talking, writing, you name it, about that spot. It's been Carmelo. They've wanted him, or not they. Fans have wanted him. If they wanted him, he would be on the team already. But it looks like it's going to be Hauser. It's going to be Hauser that gets those minutes. I mean, you'll probably see Grant get some of them too. But if you want somebody that's just there to shoot the ball, it's Hauser right now. And there's no guarantee that he, lands on his feet there. He could struggle. He struggled in the summer league after signing that new deal, right? In the past, he's been good. Last season, he was really good. Every time he shot a three, you would think it was going in garbage time. Who knows how he's going to react in regular time? So it's not a bad idea to have somebody as a backup sharpshooter. Not that Justin Jackson is, him, but he could be. Absolutely could be.
Just some wing insurance is how I view it. I think just having an extra wing on the roster is important, especially if you're bringing in Vonleh as one of the other guys. But I think that, does it for those guys. It'll be interesting to see how the Celtics approach it, because I think training camp could actually change a lot. Say, Jake Layman comes in, he shoots the ball really well, he plays with a ton of energy, and he defends at a high level in practices. Udoka probably is more apt to say, okay, let's go with this guy instead. So I think a lot could change in the next month or so as training camp starts to ramp up. So keep an eye out for that. But I think we're both leaning Vonleh, Justin Jackson for those final two spots. And there could be three. Maybe Layman gets a chance too, but I'd assume they keep it open for two-way guys and potentially signing a veteran in the middle of the season if they need to. But let's get into the two-way guys.
Sign a veteran.
Who do you think? Who's your
I don't know yet, because there's going to be buyouts and stuff like that. But when you're a team at the level of the Celtics where you're the title favorite, it's probably a decent idea to keep that spot open because of that. You don't know who's going to get it bought out. Can we do a buyout forecast? Do we have any kind of thoughts on that? I wonder who could get bought out. Who's in the last year of their deal this year? Do we know?
Well, I mean, Kemba could get bought out by the.
They don't need. Well, yeah, that's an obvious one. That's going to happen. But in all seriousness, they don't need a guard, so you can hope that some big guy gets bought out. If you really don't, if say you bring in Vonleh and he doesn't pan out and Luke Cornett doesn't give you a lot, you're still going to need somebody to relieve Horford and Williams, who's coming off that meniscus tear, of heavy minutes. You don't want those guys out there grinding away all season. You just don't. If you want Horford to play like he did last year in the playoffs again, this season in the playoffs, he needs to be rested.
Well, Sam, I don't want to get your hopes up, and I don't think they would necessarily do it, but if the Spurs are looking to lose a lot of games, I know one guy who's on the last year of his deal, who you love.
Pirtle?
No.
Who do I love?
Josh Richardson, man.
Can they do that though if he gets bought out?
It's after the end of the season, I believe, because they brought Tice back. Remember, they traded him at the deadline, then they got him the next season. So
yeah, it's true.
They could do it,
but they traded for Tice.
I think it's just the end of the season. I think you can't do it within the same season. It's like Goran Dragic got traded from the Heat, to the Raptors. And then he had to join somewhere else if he wanted to join the Heat again. But that's just because it was in the same calendar league year. The league year has passed, so I believe it would be legal.
Richardson would be great.
I'm pretty sure.
Big Richardson guy. He was a good fit when he was here. That's the funny thing is, they did a great job at cleaning house, getting rid of Schroeder and Cantor, who weren't great fits. And they brought in Tice, who did a good job filling in when Rob was out. He's a good fit on the team, despite his $8 million salary or whatever it is.
Yep.
They did a good job. at making the most of what they had. But it's just funny to me that they got rid of Richardson. Like, he was a good fit. Now, White is also a good fit. He's probably better. But Richardson
I
was
agree.
doing a good job for them last season.
I will say, I would assume they could get at least a couple seconds, maybe a first round pick for Richardson. So I don't think they'd end up buying him out. If I had to think of off the top of my head, I just pulled standings up so I could think of some guys across the league. Some guys who could potentially bought out because they don't have enough value to get picks back. Derek Favors in OKC stands out. Again, none of these guys are be, sexy options, but they're there.
Off the
Rockets
bench, that's not
just
the worst, right?
Rockets just traded for a couple veteran big men from Mavericks who they probably don't want. Boban Marjanovic is there, who they probably would buy him out, and Marquise Chris as well, who they might not have a ton of opportunities for. I wouldn't mind.
He's another
Either of
rebounding
these guys.
machine. Keep your eyes out on that one.
He's got energy. Yep, he's got some energy. Other than that, I don't think there's anybody else. If the Pistons want to buy out Kelly Olynyk because they don't have minutes for him, potentially, but I don't think that's a thing because I think he has 2 years left on his deal, so that doesn't seem likely. Robin Lopez just signed with the Cavs, but I could see a world where they don't have enough big man minutes for all of their guys, so maybe they buy him out. Again, none of these options are going to be particularly fun. Mason Plumlee on the Hornets, maybe he doesn't have a spot there if Mark Williams wins the starting job, but other than that, I think it's just we'll have to see. I think Derek Favors and then the 2 Rockets big men are probably the best options you're going to get, but who knows? Who knows? Let's go to the two-way guys. We got Mfiondu Kabengele and JD Davison. What are you expecting from them this season? Probably going to spend most of the year in the G League, I would assume, but what are your expectations for those 2 guys?
Especially Davidson is going to spend a lot of time up in Maine because we're going to get to it. Where's Peyton Pritchard going to find minutes? Never mind JD Davison. So
Exactly.
with the Celtics, he's not going to see a lot of opportunity. The best thing for him is to go up to Maine, make the most of it, improve shooting, improve decision-making, improve ball security, make it so you are a playable player in Boston. The defense is somewhat there. I think that's why they took him, because he's athletic and you can kind of bank on that. As far as Kabengele is concerned, is he has a real chance to open some eyes because of the uncertainty with the big man position, right? That was one of the reasons why during the summer league we were all watching. We were like, oh, is it going to be Trevion Williams? Is that who it's going to be? And it wasn't. It was Kabengele. We're like, this guy's kind of good fit. He's similar to Rob in his play style. He's not a freak athlete like Rob is, but it's there, right? You can see where he could be an understudy on this team, and he could be somebody that sees spot minutes or impresses and finds a little niche in the rotation. Who knows? But the floor would be he's up in Maine a lot and real cold.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think JD will get a ton of opportunities with the Celtics. I could see, let's say, it's going to happen. Brogdon, White, Smart, they're not going to play 82 game seasons, right? Obviously, some of them or all of them are probably going to go out in and out of the rotation. That's where I could see JD Davison getting, oh, here's a spot 10-minute night for Davison. But for the most part, I think like what you said, taking care of the ball better in Maine. If he improves his 3-point percentage, that'd be great. You need a guy to shoot. His distribution, his playmaking look great in summer league, so that's not something to worry about. Same thing with his driving. He looked great attacking the basket. So just polishing his game a little bit because he's still a very raw prospect. He only went to college for 1 year. And as for Kabengele, I think, excuse me, if he does well enough in Maine, I think there's a real shot he could eventually earn a spot on the roster, kind of like what they did with Hauser last year. They converted him from a 2-way to a standard deal. If he plays well enough, and let's say Vonleh doesn't work out, some of these end of the bench guys just don't really show it as much. Kabengele showed out in the summer league. He played really well. He looked impressive. If he, duplicates that success in Maine, I don't think it's far fetched to say the Celtics could sign him to a standard deal to be kind of a backup option to the backup option for Robert Williams. Because I don't think he'll get even if that happens, I don't think he'll get a ton of minutes, but I could see him getting 10 minutes here or there if they need an extra big man, sort of playing the Tice role of if you need somebody to play a little bit of minutes, they can play a little bit of minutes. And he's still young. I think he's 26. So he's still in the beginning stages, maybe 24 actually. How old is Kabengele?
I hope it's 24, 26. You're supposed to be in your prime
25,
by then.
25.
All right,
25.
look at that. Well, right in the middle.
Right in the middle there. But anyways, yeah, I'm leveling my expectations for those 2 guys. Let's move to Luke Cornett, our friend Bobby's favorite player. Expectations for Luke Cornett. You're hearing a lot of things from Brad Stevens, the Celtics camp, saying they like Luke. They're happy running into the season with Luke as their third string, second string big man, whatever you want to call it. What do you expect from him, and how much do you expect him to play?
Well, I expect him to play quite a bit. He is going to be the backup big guy. There are going to be games where Rob doesn't play or Al doesn't play, and he's going to see more minutes there. Brad Stevens is, of course, going to say they're happy with him because they're not making any other moves. So they're happy with their guy right now. He could be an important piece to this team. Sure, he can shoot the ball. He's a decent rim protector, believe it or not, despite the way he looks, right?
Yep.
The big, goofy white dude. But he's not bad at it. He does a decent job in there. We'll see. I'm not sure how great he's going to be on the glass, which is really, for me, what does it, especially after watching that playoff run. I mean, it's funny. I was literally talking to somebody about the playoff run today. Can you believe 2 people today, actually, believe it or not. He's got maybe the widest, maybe not. It's tough to say that this early on in our rankings, but he may have the widest floor and ceiling, right? Big rooms for Luke Cornett.
True.
Because he could really thrive in this role. He has a nice opportunity in front of him, but he could also suck. You don't know. There's a reason why the Celtics got rid of him or let him walk, and he got signed to another G League team, and then he ended up back here, right?
I'm pretty sure he signed for the Maine Celtics. I think he stayed in Maine. I don't think he was on another G League team.
Well, he got plucked off by somebody. He was signed.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say it was the Cavs that took him last year.
Oh, maybe. I think he was on a 10-day. Maybe you're right.
Something happened because I remember seeing a post where it was like, congratulations,
Yeah, no, I got you. It was probably during the COVID 10-day period we went through, but I think I have a little bit less expectations for Luke Cornett than you do. I don't think he plays more than 10 minutes a night. I really think that's probably the max for Luke. No, I think you'll see more. I think they'll start the season with the double bigs, but I wouldn't surprise me if Rob and Horford alternate in the starting lineup more with Grant as a starter, and then you kind of see those 3 kind of rotate in and out. Grant obviously playing with them, but I wouldn't expect Horford and Rob to play a ton together outside of probably the closing minutes this year, just because they don't really have that backup big man. And even last year, they didn't really have that either, right? Like we saw them play a decent amount together, but they logged a lot of minutes without each other. Like before Tice was there, who was the backup big man? Am I just blanking? Like they didn't really. Did they have one? Was it Freedom? It was Freedom.
Before. Yeah, it was him. But he wasn't playing.
Exactly.
Because they didn't like him. That's why. Not because he was bad. But because of his political views and his braveness to be outspoken. No,
they didn't like him because he was bad.
Dude, if Tatum, he could say just about anything and, maybe people would get mad for a week, but then he'd score 50 points and they'd be like, yeah, he's crazy, but he puts the ball in the basket and he's, successful, right?
Yeah, no, I don't think anybody would get mad at Tatum, but I don't have much expectations for Luke Cornett. I think worst case scenario, he's displaced in the rotation by the likes of Vonleh and Kabengele, and best case scenario, I think he's a 10 to 15, maybe 15's even getting up there for me, minute guy a night. I really think, Grant, Al Horford, Robert Williams is going to take the bulk of those big man minutes. And I think if anything, Tatum plays up at the power forward a little bit. You have Brown play the 3, then you have plenty of guards to play the 1 and the 2. So I think that's probably how things iron out there. So
I'd agree with that in a playoff situation, but I just think in the regular season, they're really not going to try and run those big guys into the ground. I do agree with you saying, how they've been splitting up the minutes. Not that that's really an opinion, it's a fact, but I didn't realize it, but now that you mention it, they really didn't spend a lot of time on the floor together except for starting and closing lineups, right? And that was helpful in the playoffs, allowed Rob to rest, allowed Al to stretch the floor in different situations. In the regular season, I just think you're going to see those, especially Al Horford, have just rest days where you're going to have Cornett out there.
Yeah. I now that you say that, I think it could bump up a little higher, but I'd still probably cap out around 15 because I really think these guys like Vonleh and Kabengele have a chance to inch him out of the rotation, because as much as he is a solid rim protector and he can shoot a little bit too, so don't take that out of the equation. I think the versatility that Vonleh could potentially bring and Kabengele could potentially bring kind of outweighs his 3-point shooting and beefiness, I guess.
I guess I'm on board with that. Really, the point I'm making is somebody's playing minutes. It might not be Cornett. It might be Vonleh. It might be Kabengele. One of them is going to be out there. It's not just going to be the guys from last season. There's going to be somebody new.
Yeah, you mentioned that. I mean, Luke Cornett probably not getting a ton of minutes. These guys circling in. We don't account for the next guy on my list, which is Sam Hauser. I think he could potentially step up into a second power forward role next to Grant Williams, which would alleviate some of the pressure off of Robin Allen. I think that's kind of where I was going with my argument a couple minutes ago, but I didn't really get there. I kind of started rambling like I'm doing now. But I think if you rotate Robin Al at the center position minutes, then you have Grant and Hauser at those power forward minutes. I think you could give the bulk to the top three, and then Hauser can kind of step up into, I don't want to say 20 minutes. That seems like a lot for Hauser, but like 15 minutes a night, 18 minutes a night. You have the other three play the rest of the center power forward minutes. Jayson Tatum play some power forward minutes. Hell, Jaylen Brown can play some power forward minutes against small ball lineups if you need him to, which is why I'm not as high on Luke Cornett. But anyways, moving on to Sam Hauser. I kind of have some high expectations for him this year. I think he should be able to step up into a role. I wrote about an article about him for Celtics blog. Everywhere he's gone, he's been a great three-point shooter. And if you look at the Celtics system, they don't really need him to do much else. Obviously, there's the defensive aspect, but I found a quote, Ime Udoka talking about how he's a great team defender, and that should bode well for him immediately. If Udoka likes his defense, then, I mean, hell, so should fans. So there's that. Grant Williams found success last season by standing in the corner and hitting shots. The Celtics run a drive and kick offense.
Pretty much, yeah.
Right? I mean,
just
am I wrong?
there.
Right? I'm not wrong.
He's literally playing 2K. Like, you got the one guy doing all the dribbling, and then you have four other guys standing there, and that's what he did.
Yeah.
He was one of the four other guys.
I love the guy, but if all you need is Sam Hauser to stand in the corner and feed off of Jayson Tatum, Jaylen Brown driving kicks, I'm fine with that, right? On offense at the very least, and you can move him into some shooting sets, et cetera, have him cut, develop that sort of stuff. But I really think he's capable of playing those 15 to 18 minutes a night, and I think it'll be a good step up, for him, especially during the regular season. Like you said, playoff time, probably get cut from the rotation, but for now, I really think he could use those minutes. So I'm excited for Sam Hauser this season. What do you think?
Yeah, Hauser has like the biggest house, right? And what I mean by that is, I mean, I kind of said it with Cornett, but I really thought of like the right way to say it. Good punchline from me here, right?
Mm-hmm.
The floor is low, ceiling is high. A lot of room in the house. So Hauser has stepped up, or not really stepped up, but he has come up as the replacement for Gallinari. Gallinari is down with a knee injury. He's probably not playing the season. There's your opportunity, Hauser. You are the shooter. Gallinari was supposed to be the shooter. Now that's your job. And you've proved you can do it. You've shot well everywhere. Like you said, Jack, in the G League, 40%. In the NBA in garbage time last year, 43%. The only real, if you want to get nervous about it type deal was the Summer League this year. He just wasn't great.
What are you going to do? You keep talking. I'm going to.
He shot like 25. He was like 2 for 8 in the Summer League.
But
limited
sample size.
No, very limited. I agree. Yeah. But he was not what you were hoping he would be in those Summer League games. Going into the Summer League, I think we were all thinking all right, Sam Hauser just signed a 3-year deal. He's going to ball out, and it didn't happen. Mm-hmm. So we'll see what happens in terms of his shooting. I don't know if he's going to be a power forward, though. He's definitely not doing a whole lot besides shooting, right? At least Grant, when he was, just standing in the corner, that was just on offense. On defense, Grant was the dude. He was guarding some of the hardest guys to guard, especially in the playoffs. I mean, obviously, he had found a role on the team before then, but he was covering Giannis and KD, did an excellent job on KD. Hauser isn't doing that for you, but he doesn't have to. He doesn't have to, and he can shoot the lights out. He really can. Everybody raves about the guy.
The statement you just said, I think, maybe a little bit of Celtics fan syndrome where you look at one guy who does something really well. Not everybody's going to be defending Giannis and Stephen Curry and everybody. I think Grant Williams is just good at that. I don't think you need Sam Hauser to be this all-world defender for him to play the power forward, because realistically speaking, I feel like it's easier to defend the power forward position than the small forward position. Maybe I'm crazy. I feel like I'd rather have him defending power forwards and small forwards. Anyways, that's just picking
the league now is
anyways.
Different. You're right. Yeah. It's not 2 bigs in the post. It's 1 big, if at all, in the post. Yeah. And then the rest of them are shooting. A lot of 4s are stretch 4s.
Regardless, so, I think
Gallinari wasn't guarding anybody.
Yeah, true, exactly. My thing is at the worst case scenario, you put him in the corner against shooters, and he has to chase them around, or they play switch defense anyway. So if you just have him keep switching off onto the worst offensive player, and if they attack Hauser, you have Rob in the paint to help, and they're probably going to spend time attacking Hauser, but they can't do it every play. And if they do, you take him out of the game. So,
Well, Ime's not a
yeah,
moron.
yeah,
We're
and
saying this.
he said he was a
He's
good team
definitely
defender. So
thinking it.
exactly,
He said what?
exactly, yes. He said Hauser's a good team defender.
Okay, well, that means he can't guard people, but he can run around and go guard somebody else.
No,
that's
let me find
standing
the
there.
quote. Let me find the quote.
That's
for
what
you.
that means. A team defender is like, all right, you got this one. I'm gonna go guard the guy in the corner.
Yeah, he said always in the right spot, great team defender,
Yep.
and knows how to use himself. His angles and cerebral guy.
The right
Not
spot
just
is the
offensively,
corner.
but defensively. Yeah. He just said he's a guy we're comfortable putting in with starters and other guys at any time of the game. The shooting's
should
always
be.
there, but there's more than that. So, like I said, Ime usually tells it how it is, and if he's even a little bit confident in Sam Hauser, fans shouldn't be too hesitant to throw him in for 15 minutes a night. So I'm okay with Hauser.
I think we're gonna see at least one game where Hauser's like the difference maker, where he's gonna make a bunch of threes.
Yeah, I agree. I think you could see a couple of those maybe, but we can move on to our next player who you did mention earlier, Peyton Pritchard, kind of buried again in the Celtics guard rotation as he was last year, although I would argue it's even more so this season, buried behind the trio of Smart, Brogdon, and and White, who we'll talk about. But what do you expect from Pritchard? Do you foresee a scenario where the Celtics have to trade him because he's not getting minutes, or do you think he can, get a crack in the rotation?
See, if you just stopped after what do you expect for Pritchard, I would have said probably be traded, which sucks because I like Pritchard. I'm a big fan of his. He was really good throughout the playoffs last season up until the finals. He kind of lost his legs. But up until then, he was real consistent. He played well. He made threes, and you could rely on him. This season, he's not going to see a lot of time. He's better than just sitting there and watching the game from the bench. He should be playing bench minutes for somebody. And we could see the Celtics make use of that. What are they going to get back? Well, they need a big guy. Who could you get back for him? I think one that was out there was Jared Vanderbilt from Utah. Now that he's not on the Timberwolves anymore, but that's not really like
I don't
something
think that's
Danny's
as
probably urgent to do, right?
Yeah, I don't think
there are
they'll
definitely
give up
moves that you could see. Okay, Pritchard for somebody. Don't know who it's going to be.
Yeah,
but
I just don't think there's a ton of financial wiggle room there because he doesn't make a ton of money this season. I talked to Keith earlier this offseason for Celtics blog, and his money goes up to like from 2.5 to like 5 mil next year. So if he really wanted to trade Pritchard, it'd probably it'd be smarter to trade him next year when he could be a better salary matcher. But yeah, I don't know. It's going to be tough for Pritchard, like you said. He doesn't really have a set spot in the rotation, although Ime Udoka really warmed up to him last year, so I think it'll be easier for him to crack the rotation this year, as backwards as it sounds, because last year he was fighting to earn the trust of Udoka. He wasn't the best defender, but by the end of the season, Udoka trusted him as a defender, as an offensive player. He utilized his shooting, and I think you'll see that this year too. Maybe it's a hot take, but the more I think about it, the more I feel like Pritchard will actually have a more established role than people think. Because Marcus Smart, Malcolm Brogdon, not going to play all 82 games. Like I said, he's going to have to be in there. And if anything, yes, those three guys are good at defense, but if the Celtics need a shooting punch, he's going to be their guy in the backcourt, right? He's going to be in there shooting threes from the logo like he always does. He's super confident, and I think he could actually play 15 to 20 minutes a night. I think he'll get more minutes than a lot of people anticipate, especially because they don't really have backup big men or backup wings. I think you could see Brogdon, Derek White play up to the small forward more than most people expect. I think you could see a lineup of, Pritchard and then two of the other three guards, and then a big man in one of the Jays. I think that could be a lineup you see more than one might expect. So I think Pritchard will actually play more than last year as a whole, at least more total minutes than last year, whether or not he'll get the minutes per game. But he got off to a really slow start last season. And I think he'll be on better terms with Udoka this year. But I'm interested to see how Udoka manages the 4-guard rotation, because it's not going to be easy, but I think there definitely is a pathway that's clearer than most people anticipate for Pritchard. So I'm excited for that, at least.
I hope you're right. I would love to see Pritchard continue to get minutes and grow as a player. He's a good player. He is a good player. He can play on the offensive end
Yep.
with the best of them. I mean, the guy, he can score, he can shoot. You can rely on. He had big moments in the first round last year against the Nets. He had a big fourth quarter of game 1. He had 10 points in the quarter. Game 1, game 2. I mean, he has value. It just sucks if he's just buried there. I hope you're right. I hope he's not buried.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think he'll get a chance. I think he'll get his chance. But next up on my list, I have Grant Williams, my guy, my favorite. I expect big things from Grant this season. I think he'll take yet another leap. I think the 3-point shooting will still be there. I think the defense will still be there. I just think he'll get more minutes to show it off in the regular season. I think 2 years ago, right before his bad season, I predicted he'd average something like 10, 5, and 3, and I cursed him a little bit. So I'm not going to do any stat predictions this year. I'm just going to say I think the 3-point percentage will still be there. I think the defense will still be there, and I think he'll have to play more minutes because they don't really have a backup big man. So I expect him to have an even bigger role this year. And I think he could start a lot of games this year, too. If Horford's out, if Rob's out, I think he'll be in the starting lineup more often than people expect as well.
Well, I'll say this. They better pay him. They need to get an extension done with Grant Williams as soon as they can. Because if you're right, Jack, and he does have another growth of a season, right? Yep. They're going to lose out on the opportunity they had to get him for cheap. Look at what they did with Rob last year. Rob, they paid him $10 million or so. I think it might be 12 annually over 4 seasons. If they waited to extend Rob, they'd be paying him $20 million. And not only would that be the case, you would have people like us having conversations right now saying, "Oh man, like they paid Rob $20 million. He's coming off a meniscus tear. He has an injury history, blah, blah, blah." They don't have to worry about that now. And obviously Grant doesn't have an injury history. He's built like a fire hydrant. Like, I mean, the dude's not going to he's not fragile. But if he goes out there and has another season where he proves to be valuable in a role, you're going to have a tough time tying him down for less than face value. And right now you probably could get him for around the same as Rob, maybe a little less. Like I would pay him like $10 million a year.
I think he'd go for a little more.
Well, see, you say that now. Just look at after this season. Who knows?
Exactly.
Right? And if you're getting a discount after this season because he played poorly, do you even want him back? No, you don't. He's a good player. He played out for you in most of the playoffs, struggled later, wasn't great against Miami, wasn't great against Golden State. But in those first 2 rounds, he was a force, especially against the Bucks. I mean, he had that big game 7 that, no one's going to forget.
My Christmas.
Dude played well, man. He deserves it. And it's funny. We haven't heard anything about that. We haven't heard.
Yeah. I mean, I talked to Keith. I have a date for you. 10/17, October 17th. So
yeah, they have to
a
do
month
it
and 2 days from now.
Starts.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the last day they can sign a rookie scale extension. Keith was also talking to me about numbers he expects. He was around what you said. He said, potential Grant gets something like 12 to 13 million.
Minds.
So you'd probably be starting somewhere between 10 and 11, and it would climb up to like 15. The 12 and 13 would be annually in the scaling contracts, etc. But I mean, next season, like you said, even from Keith here saying, as you look at the teams that project to have cap space, there's a handful of teams that can make sense on. Grant can make sense on that could pay him, something in the $15 to $20 million a year range, which is like, then you're starting to get a expensive money. But if he has another great season, he might be worth that because that's what role players are going for nowadays, right? You look at Jalen Brunson, who signed in New York. You look at Maxi Kleber, who just signed a 3-year, $33 million extension, something like that. Dorian Finney-Smith signed a pretty big deal last year. There's guys around the league going for a lot of money, and it's not because they're not worth it. And Keith mentioned this too. It's because you got to think of it as a fraction of the salary cap rather than a raw amount. Because $30 million isn't a max contract anymore, right? Like a few years ago, we're thinking of that as like the max a player could make. Stephen Curry's making $60 million a year, right? We got to start thinking of money on an increasing
I still think
scale.
of it as the max. Obviously,
if
you listen
very
to us regularly, No, I know, but. I'm very stingy. I'm like, this guy shouldn't be making that much money. This guy shouldn't be making that much money.
Again, so think of it as a portion of the cap, not as like $30 million.
I understand.
2 years ago
I understand. I just see the number and I'm like, oh man, like, well, prayers to that team.
$30 million 2 years ago was like what 30% of the cap, 33% of the cap, and now, or a few years ago, and in 2 years from now, it's going to be like 15-20% of the cap. Like it matters, the cap growing. But
Of
regardless,
course.
that being said, I think Grant Williams extension is something to watch. I expect big things from this season. I think he'll have to play a lot of minutes because the backup big man. And I think you feel the same. So looking forward to that. But Derek White
Pay the
next
man.
on my list. Pay the man. Absolutely. Derek White is next. We can lump him in with Malcolm Brogdon because we're kind of like running up on the 45-minute mark here, and we should
Well, we're not. We
start
had a
filling it.
5 minute because I lagged. So we're
We
really
did.
only
You're
on
right.
like 38.
35, 38. Yeah. Anyways, Derek White and then Malcolm Brogdon. I kind of lump them in as the same player. Am I crazy for that? I feel like they're just like carbon copies. I think Malcolm Brogdon probably has a little bit more playmaking and offensive, and Derek White's a little bit more on the defensive. They're pretty much the same. I think they're both carbon copies of what Marcus Smart does, except Marcus Smart's, better on defense. They're essentially just three of the same guards, I would argue, that do things slightly better than the other. And I think that's exactly what the Celtics wanted. But Derek White, what are you expecting?
Um, but yeah, he's gonna have a full season with the Celtics. He didn't have that last season. We're gonna see how comfortable he gets as a career 3-point shooter. He was better on the Spurs than he was
Yeah.
last year here, right? Last year was a down year for him. So
Yeah.
if he's able to find his footing behind the arc again, he's going to be a real weapon for the Celtics. And there were moments in the playoffs where he was really great. Game 6 against Miami, he was the only guy giving him anything down the stretch, and he almost won him the game. Now you're going to have a little bit less of an opportunity because of Brogdon, right? They're probably going to play a similar role off the bench. One of them will play off the ball. And obviously you don't sub 5 at a time, but that's how we think of it as, fans.
Yeah.
But he has a good opportunity to really cement himself on this team because he's going to have a full year under his belt here. And who knows how healthy Brogdon will be. He might have a bigger role than we think he's going to have, right?
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. I mean, I think, Derek White, like you said, having that extra year in the Celtics offense is important. I think you can see his 3-point shot improve a little bit. I think you'll see him improve as a driver. His floaters were on point in the playoffs. That was the best part of his game. So I think getting to do that a little more in the flow of the offense will be huge for him. I think he'll be a ball handler as much as he can be. So yeah, I just expect more consistency from him next year now that he's more used to the system. And as for Brogdon, I think he would be in 6 man of the year conversations if he was going to play a full season. I probably 50 to 55 games if I had to guess, right? Like just being realistic, maybe 60.
Who knows? He doesn't.
Max,
He's probably not going to have to. Even if he's healthy, he's not going to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This isn't me saying like he's going to be hurt, but I just don't think he'll end up getting up to the 70 game mark. I think 60 is probably the cap for him, and then he'll be good for the playoffs, which is what you want from him. But 6 man of the year numbers in not enough games to qualify for the award is what I would like from him. Worst case, he kind of falls behind Derek White in the rotation. The 3-point shot's not there. That's the floor, but I expect good things from Brogdon. Just solid, consistent production off the bench, which is kind of just what Brogdon's been all about for the majority of his career. What about you?
Better equipped to handle the ball, him or Brogdon or White? Who would you rather see being the guy handling the ball?
Probably Brogdon. But it's a toss-up. I mean, they're both fully capable. I just think Brogdon's shown more prowess as a playmaker. I mean, when they traded for him, everyone was like, "Oh, the Celtics finally got a real point guard." When in reality, he averaged the same amount of assists as Marcus Smart did for the past 2 years. So it's like, don't watch.
I will say this: I obviously don't get to watch Brogdon as much. I mean, I could if I really wanted to, but I really watch guys that play against the Celtics or on the Celtics, and Derek White impressed me a lot last year when he arrived with his playmaking. Some of the passes Derek White would make would blow your mind. I remember he hit Rob on a cut against Atlanta in one of his first games on the lob, and it was like, dude, how did he see that pass? So I think I kind of disagree. I think Brogdon is better equipped to score out of like an isolation situation or off the catch than Derek White. At least last year's Derek White was, right? If he continues to shoot the way he did last year, you want him with the ball and somebody else catching and shooting. But if he shoots like he did for the rest of his career, then yeah, absolutely play him off the ball.
Yeah, sorry, I was muted there for a sec. I think the best part about it is though they're really interchangeable. All three of the Celtics point guards, all of them can handle the ball. All of them are probably not the best shooters, but they're capable of playing off the ball. So
They play
That's the upside.
defense.
Exactly. That's the important part. They play defense. But next up, big man, aging vet, Al Horford. Uh, you've heard reports from Steve Bulpett of Heavy.com that he's probably going to sit out back-to-backs next year, which is to be expected. Probably going to take an easier load on him. I don't want to say nervous, but I think how he plays this year is a good indicator as to how he'll be, if he'll retire, et cetera, because you got to remember last season coming into it, he was off of like full half a season of rest, more than that, three-quarter
More
season
than
of
that.
rest. Yeah, OKC played him, I think 26
9
games was the
months.
number. Yeah,
Something
exactly.
like
He
that.
was fully rested up, but now he's not only coming off of a full regular season where he was playing every night, but he also went through an entire playoff run where he was worked, like grueling through
He
every
was
round.
worked and he played well, right?
He was great, but you have to imagine he's tired. So you got.
I agree. I agree with that.
I think it's similar to the Brogdon thing. I think he plays 60 games max in the regular season, so he's rested up for the playoffs, which, again, like you mentioned earlier, is potentially the concern because they don't really have a backup big man. But what are you looking for from Rob this year? Or sorry, Al. Sorry, getting ahead of myself.
Yeah, I'd like to see Al showing off the old drip there like he's Ben Simmons in round 1, right? You want Al Horford to be ready to go when it matters, just like you said. So as much as I want the Celtics to win every single game, and during the regular season when the injury reports drop and it shows him resting, I'm not going to be thrilled. But as, somebody that's not involved emotionally just yet, I would like to see him rested enough to where he's going to be healthy. He's going to be fresh and ready to go when the playoffs come around. Because, listen, Celtics should not be screwing around with anything except for a championship this year. They are the odds-on favorites, and Al Horford's a big part of that. I did sneak him into 3 players that could make the All-Star team for the Celtics just because, the dude said, hey, look, I'm still kind of nasty in the playoffs last year. He was. He was fantastic. So he still has it in the tank. The question is he going to have to, go into the tank in the regular season? My answer is no. So
yeah,
I expect him to be a good mentor to Rob, a good mentor to the other bigs on the team, and give them what they need. Whether it's him sitting there or him playing, who knows?
Excuse me, sorry, I just coughed in the mic. Speaking of that, my pick for the third All-Star spot, if the Celtics are good enough to have 3 All-Stars, and assuming the Jays get in, obviously.
And I agree with you.
Yes, my pick would be. I think we're going to say different people, though. I don't think you agree with me.
Go ahead.
I'm going Rob.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Okay, I thought you were going to say Marcus again like last year.
Well, I'll tell you why Marcus won't be when we get there. But
yeah.
Go ahead.
Is it because there's too much guard production?
Yeah, there's just too many good guards in the East for it to happen.
Yeah, I agree. Anyways, Rob, though, I think there's a real path for him to put up some crazy numbers this year, barring health. I think they're going to be careful with him coming off the meniscus tear because he still wasn't right in the playoffs. And yes, he's had an offseason, but I think they're going to be cautious at the start of the year regardless. But if he gets in there, he starts doing his thing. Not only does he have the Jays next to him making plays, he now has one of the strongest backcourts in the NBA to throw him lobs all game. He averaged 10 and 10 last year with 2.5 blocks, something crazy like that.
Just missed it on the rebounds, like he's 9 something. But if you like round up, it's 10 and 10
effectively. Plus, he showed some passing skills. I think there's a real chance Rob could average something like 15, 11, and 2.5 blocks, and then however many assists, 3. If the Celtics are on a 60 win pace by the All-Star break, and it's okay, this team should probably have 3 All-Stars, 15, 10, 3, and 2 blocks is probably the third All-Star, right? He's not going to inch towards 20 points per game just because the Jays take so many shots and there's so many other mouths to feed. But if he's there on a consistent basis and he can play 32 minutes a night, if he's healthy enough to do that, I think he could be the third All-Star. And I think this is has a potential to be a breakout season for Rob. And I think the worst case scenario is obviously more injury issues, but barring that, the floor is probably something around, like what he did, 10 and 10, which is fine. Yeah. It's a defensive player of the year player, but I think there's real boom potential for Time Lord this year, or Mob Williams.
I agree, and I'm really upset that you took the words out of my mouth because I was going to say,
sorry.
When the All-Star break rolls around and the voting and selection process happens, it's going to depend on how great the Celtics are, because we as fans have high expectations. The odds makers have high expectations, putting them as title favorites. So if they're in the area where they should be, it's not unrealistic for them to have 3 all-star players. We've
Yeah.
seen plenty of teams in the past have 3 all-stars, especially when they're playing at a top level. And Rob is going to be that third guy if they do have one, because behind Embiid, it's really not that saturated with big men, right? Like Adebayo's good. Jared Allen's a good player. Capella's a good player. I really hope I'm not missing anybody that's like mainly a center, but I don't
Vucevic.
think I am. Nah, he's not going to be an all-star.
I'm
Rob's
just
better
looking
than he
through.
is.
I'm just
But
looking through.
those guys are, besides Embiid, are not guys that Rob is not capable of taking a spot from. Maybe Bam is kind of grandfathered in, but I mean, we've seen Rob outplay Bam. Like he's
I
been
think Rob is the
better.
clear-cut third best center in the East. I would agree
No,
with
I
you. I think
agree
he's
with
the
you.
third best
I
center. Yeah.
completely agree with you. And Jared Allen found his way
Well,
onto the team last year, and they have a very similar play
I think
style.
Jared Allen's right now slightly better than Rob, so I'll go 4. But I will also say it's not centers; it's front court players. So that's where he gets screwed. You know what I'm
You could
saying?
see that. You could see. I
So
still think he might sneak on.
I think there's a chance too, but I think the Celtics have to be really good because then you're talking Jimmy Butler, you're talking, Pascal Siakam, Scotty Barnes, who's a young up and coming player, DeMar DeRozan is going to
Giannis,
be in there, Kevin Durant, Giannis is in there, Evan
Tatum.
Mobley's up and coming, Jason Tatum, obviously,
Mobley's a sleeper
uh,
pick. That's a good pick too.
exactly. Yeah, there's some guys. They got some guys in these, but there's definitely room for him to get in there if he needs to. I mean, you don't want like hearing it, but if Ben Simmons plays the center position next year, he's going to put up the stats, and the Nets could be good if he's consistent. Porzingis, I mean, he's on a
Oh,
bad
I forgot
Wizards
he was
team.
there.
Julius Randle's there if he has a bounce back
Randall's not going to be
season.
any good. I'm just telling you right now, he's not going to
Yeah.
be any good.
Oh yeah, that's fine. That's fine. But like you said, the guard position. I think Jalen is the one who's going to have troubles if the Celtics underperform at all. I mean, if they're good, he'll have a lock spot. But if he doesn't, we're talking: is Jimmy Butler
It's only
qualifying as a
gotten more
guard?
difficult.
Exactly. We're talking Jalen Brown. Chris Middleton. We didn't name as a forward either.
Middleton. I mean, I put Middleton in the guard slot, but
That's
he's
fine.
probably not.
Drew
But
Holiday's there.
you've
James
got
Harden's there. Fred VanVleet.
Harden, Donovan Mitchell, Fred VanVleet,
Bradley Beal.
Brad Beal.
Your favorite player.
Who?
Zach LaVine.
He's not better than Jaylen Brown.
Trae Young and DeJounte Murray.
Trae Young, DeJounte Murray, LaMelo Ball. I mean,
Tyrese Halliburton, Cade Cunningham, Jalen Brunson, RJ Barrett. You got guys, is the point. You got a lot of guards competing for those spots in the East. It's gonna be tough. It's gonna be tough for all stars next year, and the West is just as tough too. There's so much talent in the NBA this year, but I think Rob has a chance to be an all star, and I think you do too. I think high expectations for Rob is the point we're making. Next up, Marcus Smart. I know you had a take on him, so I'll let you start here so I don't steal your words again.
Well, no. It was just saying, like, if the East wasn't so like riddled with top tier guards, he could find his way on. Like maybe like 10 years ago, he would be primed for a potential all-star season, right? But it's just not realistic. There's too much star power. Even if you just take like guys that came over to the conference in the offseason, Murray and Mitchell, like
Jalen Brunson, even too.
Jalen Brunson, like those guys are all players that are more apt to get votes than Marcus. And also, not to mention, if you're not a Celtics fan, you hate Marcus. Like nobody besides us likes that guy. If you go on NBA Reddit,
and
like,
even some of us don't like him, and even some people in Boston don't like him.
Those are the people that you don't have intelligent conversations with. But if you go on Reddit or Twitter where people are talking about like, whatever, like people loved when game 5 happened against Milwaukee and you could point a finger at him in the last 2 possessions of making a mistake. I will say
the only thing that could potentially get Marcus a spot, if Rob doesn't put up the necessary stats and the Celtics are good enough to have 3 all-stars, he wouldn't be a starter. So fan voting and player voting wouldn't matter. It would come down to the coaches' votes. And I think coaches very clearly respect what Marcus does. I think he has respect around the league from the players and the coaches. And so if he does put up, you mentioned you don't think he'll put up the stats because of the guard rotation. I also don't think that, but let's say he does like 13, 4, and like 5 or 6. I don't think that's, too off. It's obviously not the flashiness
Just
of the Jalen
depends
Brunsons,
because
but
he has
it's
gotten the
tough.
nod now league wide because he won Defensive Player of the Year. Now I know that's
Yes.
picked by the media, but he still has the respect of people around the league, like you said, like with the coaches. So you see Draymond get it. Draymond has had seasons where he hasn't put up monster numbers, but he's still been an all-star because he makes such an impact. Marcus might not be at
Yeah.
that level, but he's
Well,
close
he's getting
enough. I
there.
mean, he won
He's
the
getting there.
award.
Exactly. Exactly. I think that's the only thing you could see um get him into the All-Star game. But anyways, we can move on to the last two stars of the show. We'll start with Jaylen Brown. I'm just gonna throw it out there. All NBA. I think that has to be the goal for Jalen this season. If he does get All NBA, he'll get a lot more money on his next contract. Um, I think that has to be the goal for him this year, and I think it's very attainable if the Celtics are good. You want to see him improve the ball handling, like we saw in the playoffs, improve the playmaking. I think unlocking his passing is the next key to get him. If Jaylen Brown becomes a better passer, I think he's on Jayson Tatum's level, and that's crazy of me to say. But I think as long as he gets, the 3-point shooting efficiency down more consistently, because they were close last year because Jayson Tatum had a down year. But if he improves his 3-point efficiency and improves as a passer a little bit, I think he's closer to Jayson Tatum than most people currently believe. And I think All NBA is the next step for Jalen.
Yeah. Well, I'm not thinking about that for whatever reason. We just spent, 3 different player expectation segments on all-star selections. But I'm not thinking about accolades with Jalen. I'm really just thinking about how effective can he be? How much can he improve? Because every season, the story with Jalen is, okay, what did he get better at this year? Because he has been
Exactly.
a
Well,
mastermind. Like
he's gotten
he is
better
the
at working
epitome.
underwater.
He's the epitome of getting better at something every single season. And
Yep.
this year, I'd love to see his ball handling get tighter because in the playoffs, we watched him turn the ball over all the time. It was bad, especially in the later rounds. I mean, whatever happened, if he had some kind of injury that we don't know about or something, or teams just learned that if they throw 3 guys at him, it doesn't end well for him. Whatever that is, he needs to figure that out because if he's able to do that, it doesn't only get easier for him, it gets easier for everyone else because now you're seeing 3 guys go at Jaylen Brown and teams are left exposed. You've got open guys now. You've got 2 open players, and that ties into the playmaking, which you have requested he get better at. We will make sure we send those requests right to the desk. I mean, it's going to make things so much easier for everybody involved.
Yeah,
Simple
100%.
as that.
100%. I don't think you could have said it any better.
All NBA is a very fair expectation, right? And everyone on Twitter is having the old hype train because a video came out of him playing in that gym that makes everybody 10 times better than they are.
It's not going to be easy. Like we talked about with the guards, like you're going to have to get, excuse me, if he's a guard at All NBA, think about this. Steph Curry, Luka Doncic, Trae Young, Chris Paul, James Harden, Ja Morant. That's tough.
I mean, the list goes on. I mean, we just had a conversation, Jack, about him maybe not even making the All-Star team in the Eastern Conference.
Exactly.
Never mind All NBA. So
and I didn't even mention Devin Booker. I didn't even mention Donovan Mitchell. I didn't even mention
I stopped you because the list would be too long. I know what I was doing.
Irving is going to play next year, and I know you don't like him, but he's an All NBA player if he plays all the games.
He's got the talent if he plays, and
exactly
isn't a nutcase. Sure,
exactly. So it's tough for Jalen, but I think that has to be the goal. And if the Celtics are good enough, I could see it happening. Lastly,
fair.
Jayson Tatum.
I'm going to go first.
Yes.
I would tell you, if you were a betting man or woman, put money on him to win MVP.
Yes.
And you might say, Sam, why would you say that? And I would say, I don't necessarily believe he's going to win the MVP, but I do think if you take him getting the MVP, you are getting good odds.
Yep.
You are going to get bang for your buck. It's very possible that he is going to be MVP. And here's why. The Celtics are a wagon, okay? They are. There's no way around it.
Yeah.
They were a wagon for the second half of last season. And honestly, if he had his head out of his ass the whole year, which may not happen again this year, we don't know. We forget that in the fall, the man can't play. He could have been MVP last year. The way he played in the second half of the season, he absolutely could have been MVP if he put that together for a full season, right? Now, the Celtics again, are going to be a wagon than they were last season, and they're going to have a chip on their shoulder because they were horrible in the playoffs, and they still made the finals, and they were horrible. Like, out of how good they could have been, they were like the worst. So if they figure it out, they are going to be nasty, and he's going to be their best player. And that factors in to how reliable or likely you may be to win the MVP. And he's probably going to have the stats to do it as well. He has been someone that has continued to improve, like Jaylen Brown. It maybe not be as evident because the improvements for Tatum tend to happen mid-season instead of at the beginning of the season.
Mm-hmm.
But he has the keys in his hand to win an MVP. The eyes are going to be on the Celtics. They have a ton of national TV games. If he's playing well, people are going to see it, and the standings are going to show it. The Celtics haven't had an MVP since Bird. I mean, it's about time that there has been an MVP trophy in Boston.
What was the last
Tatum
one? Bird
is the guy.
Was it Bird? Was Bird the last one?
Bird won 3 in a row and then screwed. You know.
Yep.
That's what I was going to say. Reason why he shouldn't be in that conversation.
That's what I was going to say.
And I knew you were going to say it, and I wanted to say it because I was saying it last year that you should take him for the MVP if you're betting.
You just wanted to beat me out. Yeah, I was going to say 3 letters, MVP. That's what Tatum's got to go for this year. I think the floor is another down shooting year, more turnover issues, which please just clean up. Just clean up the turnovers. That was extremely not fun to watch.
Chief.
Yeah, he's been working on that.
I forgot about that. I forgot how frustrating that was. Like, he would get inside and just miss. And listen, if you ever see me play basketball, I am no,
I'm pretty sure we mentioned
touch around the rim, soft touch guy. Listen, a layup for me is like a 3-pointer for other people.
Yeah,
you want me shooting the ball. But you're in the NBA, you finish your layups.
I think we talked about it earlier this season on a podcast. Drew Hanlon, Tatum's trainer, said he's working on finishing through contact, which is chef's kiss, exactly what you want to see. But yeah, excuse me, MVP, All-Star should be a given at this point. All NBA should be a given at this point, Tatum. If you don't get either of those, it's a terrible season. MVP should be the goal, and it's not going to be easy. There's plenty of players, like I said, Steph, Luka, Joel Embiid, Nikola Jokic, Giannis, lots of guys aiming for it or putting up the stats for it, I should say. But Tatum should absolutely be in the conversation moving forward. Booker as well, but Tatum's got to have his sights out set on that. And I believe he told Joel Embiid last year, he said, you better win it this year because it's mine next year. So he's got his eyes on it. But that wraps it up. Gallinari did not make the cut because he's not going to play. So
my expectation for Gallinari is he will be like
traded.
He'll be there. You'll see him.
He could get traded. I think they trade his contract. Like what the Cavs did with Ricky Rubio last year. Remember when he got traded for Karis LeVert on the injured deal? I think he probably gets his salary matched and traded, maybe with Peyton Pritchard, maybe with other guys, but we shall see. Anyways, anything else you wanted to cover quickly before we get out of here? We've done a solid hour in the middle of the offseason.
Yeah, we got an hour. How about that? I mean, it's been 2 weeks. We should give you an hour, but
look at that.
I hope you enjoyed it, and I don't know what to tell you. I mean, you've got a month.
Yeah,
less than that, because we're going to have more stuff to talk about. You're going to have media day, we said it in the first take of the show, and then my internet pulled the signature move. But media day coming up, preseason coming up. I mean, we are going to have all kinds of stuff to talk about.
Lots of stuff.
We will wrap it up here. I am hungry.
Yeah. Me too.
Yes. Have you made your trip to Dunkin' yet today?
I didn't actually go to Dunkin' today. I woke up very early today for me. Very early.
What time did you get up today?
I think 8:30.
Jesus Christ, Jack. I was up before you, and I was sleeping in.
All right. I went to bed at 5, so that was very early for me.
Oh, Jesus, Jack. Go back to bed.
I don't know why I woke up, but when I wake up, I can't fall back to sleep. So I was up and I was up. And so
I do not envy you. I'm very good at sleeping.
Yeah, I haven't eaten much today either.
Sorry about that to tell you after we're done, but very good at sleeping.
Yeah. Anyways, that's it for us. Thank you guys for listening. We appreciate it. Subscribe on YouTube if you haven't, and I'll throw it to Sam.
Yeah, Jesus. I thought you were about to take my whole thing.
No, never.
Yeah,
never.
Well, thank you very much for listening or watching. If you're watching, you're on YouTube, perhaps on From the Rafters, which now has over 100 subscribers. Yes. Then we are also on Guy Boston. So whichever one you're on, make sure you subscribe, like, share. We put out a good show. We would love people to see it. If you're just listening, that's cool too. You're probably on some streaming service. Make sure you follow us there in case Jack doesn't tweet out the pod. If he does tweet it, it's at From Rafters Pod on Twitter. You will find it there. If you want all of Jack's work he does, you can follow him at Jack Simone NBA. He's on heavy. He's grinding away, putting out articles in the dog days of summer here. And if you want my articles, look at that. Sam is off his ass putting out articles. Can you believe it? You can follow me at Sam LaFrance NBA. And you'll see me tweet some other stuff too. I put out the picture of the amateur sketch. That's our triple.
Taco, come on.
Taco's having some fun here.